We're going to start the conference with the man that started everything. He doesn't need an introduction because he's the man of the hour. Please, everyone, a big round of applause for Mihai Alisie.
Nice one. Cu drag.
Needless to say, the co-founder of Ethereum.
Yeah. Wow. I would continue on the note that everything is a team effort, and starting everything is a bit way too much in the bigger story. And Ethereum wouldn't be what it is today without its community. So, I stand by when I say that Ethereum's killer application is its community, and seeing you all here just makes me, very excited and grateful to be part of this community. Coming back to Romania 10 years later at the first Ethereum event organized in Romania. So, yeah, it's a nice one, an important one. So just to continue maybe on Octavian's Ostanescu.eth note, let's try a bit of a game so we get pumped up. Maybe it's gonna flop, but let's see, maybe it will flip. When I say ETH, you say Bucharest. So let's try it. ETH. 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 Yay! Nice one. So let's get this started. Can we get the slides? Wow, so I'm very excited. Let's see if this works, During the test, everything worked too well. Like, what's wrong? Okay, yay, okay. So today we're going quite deep into what we've been thinking about since 2016, May 3rd, World Press Freedom Day, when we unveiled AKASHA, which is an effort that we started way before, actually right about the time when Ethereum had its genesis. Since the earliest days, I was already dreaming with a bunch of people about what can we do now that we have this new technology at hand. And in this journey, this is one of the coolest things that we think can be done, but of course, I'll let you to decide that. Before we get started, I'm just going to let you know we have about 70 slides to go through. Fasten your seatbelt, and let's see if everything works well. Hopefully the clicker also. Yeah, but before that, again, a big applause to Romania and ETH Bucharest, all the organizers, all the hackers, all the people present here, all the sponsors, everyone that worked together to make this happen, including yourself for being here. Without you, it wouldn't be the same thing. Before we get started, I would like, just because also the organizer said it would be a nice touch to the presentation, to give you a bit of the background, what happened besides behind the scenes when we started Ethereum. And as part of the team, the Ethereum co-founders, I was alongside Roxana, Lorenzo, and Matthias, another guy from Denmark, going in Switzerland to explore it as a potential jurisdiction for Ethereum as a legal entity, because people had some questions, will we get in trouble if we are contributing code to this? Today, things are a bit more, let's say, relaxed, more gray than dark, but back then it was, what about the children? If you would say Bitcoin or something, you must be doing something bad. As part of this journey, Roxana actually found a place which you might be familiar with the name, the Ethereum Spaceship, which was the headquarters for Ethereum for a long time, where we tested this idea that I was looking forward to test for quite some time, the Hollands. And the Hollands themselves are this idea that you can have these loosely organized groups which retain their independence and autonomy while still being part of a larger whole without sacrificing their independence and autonomy. So you still have the network effects while still also preserving the idea of freedom, independence, and autonomy within a group. And inside this place, many things happened, including at various times what we had like hackathons and brainstorming and quite a few beautiful things. You can see here we had like a huge whiteboard where we would write all kinds of stuff. Here would be like the table where we would be hacking. Quite cheap, IKEA kitchen blocks, I don't know how to call them, on very, it was not about getting super fancy, but about having the right people doing the right thing with the right motivation, which I think to some extent is the vibe kept also in this event. Taking it further. And as an example of some of the things that we would be exploring on this whiteboard, community and the idea that a key ingredient in Ethereum success would be the members that would self-organize and do things together, was this idea of hubs or Hallands. You see here hubs and Halland too. And within these hubs, let's say constellation, you would have the individuals, each with their own strengths and skills that would be able to find their place in the right project. And Ethereum is a community of communities, so you could see these hubs being part of a network like we described earlier, while still maintaining their independence. And depending on where, and let's say you are a designer that wants to grow their skill or contribute to something, you would be able to see within the hub network which projects need a designer, or if you're a software developer, etc. That being the main idea. And let's see, the clicker. When the whiteboard is not enough, you go on the windows. At some point, it was like full of scribbles and things on all the windows. It's not the operating system. And it was quite an exciting time, leading all to what later is known as the Ethereum project. And just in this graph, we have a visualization of the contributions to the code base of Ethereum, which is quite beautiful. And the reason I'm showing this is that it's important to take in consideration that these projects like Ethereum, and not only, are something alive, something that each individual part of the community make a contribution towards and make an impact, make it evolve. So in this beautiful visualization, we have just one dimension, the code contributions, the visualization of the contributions made in the GitHub repository. However, it's important to know that you have many types of contributions within an ecosystem like Ethereum. You have, for example, designs, infographics, blog posts, organizing workshops, organizing events like this, being part of a meetup, organizing a meetup. All of these things are not captured here, but they are part of the bigger picture. So you can abstract and think that in our way, being present here and being part of this, it's making something like this unfold as part of the Ethereum community, part of the story 10 years later, another branch reviving, reactivating within the Ethereum community, which makes me super, super happy to be part of. And on this note, this is an ultra rare, let's say, footage celebrating the 10 years since Ethereum Foundation was incorporated. And speaking about important moments, yay, timestamping, Ethereum Foundation is now officially recognized as a legal entity. So, quite a milestone, back in the thing. Again, it's all about all kinds of people, all kinds of knowledge. In this case, also the lawyers really helped us navigate this uncertain landscape. And let's say as a follow-up from this, we then had the Ethereum crowd sale, famously, 2 weeks from now, but at some point, 2 weeks were actually today. And to our surprise, at some point, we started even doubting ourselves. It's like, is this cool and other people will see it as cool, or is it like we are living in a bubble, so to say? So for the first few minutes, the ticker stayed at 0. It's like, maybe we were living in a bubble, but after 42 days, we actually made history because at the time it was the most successful crowdfunding campaign in the history of the humanity as a one-time event. Pretty epic because it was, in a way, setting in motion something that evolved to what it is today. And as an example of how this triggered the next wave of projects, and Ethereum itself became as the platform on top of which other people can build their ideas and their platforms. This is a visualization, again, very unidimensional of one specific use case, where we can see a snapshot between 2016, late 2016 and late 2017. not capturing everything, but you can see how many projects started replicating what we were doing with Ethereum as an idea. And one of the use cases that was facilitated by this platform and the smart contracts and the systematic deployment of smart contracts was this use case of fundraising, although I know we don't call it fundraising, but you know what I mean. So this is, visually speaking, to me, at least in my mind, it reminds me of this slow-mo picture where you have the bullet, the initial kind of entry point, and that's Ethereum with its $18.5 million, and everything that followed afterwards, all the projects, all the ideas, everything that kind of, you know, emerged since then. And back there, we had just a tiny slice of what happened afterwards. It's tens of billions today, if not in the hundreds of billions. And I think we're still early, 10 years, and let's say the current stage, we find ourselves after the Dencun upgrade, where scalability is still around the corner, but way closer than 10 years ago. We'll really make this bubble pop, this ball of fire, so to say. And, you know, after we had the Ethereum crowdfunding, and we also made the main network launch happen in July 2015, that was one of the moments where, in some cases, you know, ideas fly ahead of reality, and, you know, reality hits. So it's like, wow, what about DAOs and all of these other? Because we're like, man, we are still trying to get the clients to stay in sync and not fork the chain. So it took a bit of time until, you know, we got to the maturity where we are today. However, I was very excited about this idea of using this technology to tackle freedom of expression and collective memory. So this is, let's say, the root idea from which AKASHA was born, developing systems for freedom of mind and human connection. And freedom of mind in this context refers to the self-sovereignty of thought, which is, I think, kind of an endangered thing these days with all of the AIs and all the recommendation and all of these emotional exploitations of the things. Like if you had a relationship status on your Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, and now it changed to single, or it's complicated. Don't be surprised if you get some really weird ads like, wow, top 10 things to do when, you know, so that's for me an example in which they are exploiting an emotional vulnerability, trying to sell you something, which is maybe not okay. And the human connection part refers to this idea that fundamentally we are social creatures that thrive and need actually this social interaction in our lives. And we cannot do many things alone, but we can achieve so much if we work together. So this is why I think something like AKASHA really made sense. And AKASHA Foundation is an entity that is a non-profit established in Switzerland, let's say, in a way, providing the support for what we are building. And in the earliest beginnings, 2015, 2016, we really wanted to test this idea. Is it possible to have a fully decentralized on-chain social network? Yes. Is it the best idea? Not quite, and there are a number of reasons why. But technologically speaking, yes, you can, and if you should, that's a different question. So in all of this time, we have built 3 fully functioning decentralized social networking apps, learning through each iteration what can we do better and how to, let's say, minimize the on-chain footprint, use the cryptographic proofs and the building blocks in more creative ways without needing a transaction for everything. So it was quite a long journey getting to where we are today. And as part of that evolution, as also part of the hackathon, we are introducing AKASHA Core, which is an open source framework for building and distributing composable Web3 apps. It's quite a beautiful thing, especially if you are a programmer, and introduces this idea of applications in applications, and quite a powerful way in which communities can customize their use cases. And for example, instead of having these cookie cutter type solutions where, you know, if you need events, you use meetup.com or something like this, now you can evolve that use case depending on what is actually the need that you want to be solving. And as part of the, let's say, stack, the community applications are actually very important in this picture. And the reason why we also started introducing AKASHA Core at this hackathon is to understand how we can better fine-tune and improve this developer experience, because it's very important in this case also to make sure that, you know, user experience is super important, but also developer experience should be kept in consideration. And I will have an example from the hackathon where a team is actually working on something very interesting using the AKASHA Core. It's worth mentioning that in this hackathon we have ETH Bucharest as a template repo starter, which provides a very specific subset of the entire functionality, because, you know, it's still a work in progress. But it should be available in all its glory later this year. In the meantime, if you want to get your hands and play with it, just visit the GitHub repo. You will find there the ETH Bucharest repo. And just to give you an example of that composability and how powerful it can be as part of an application, in this example, we have something like a post, which we call beams, because, you know, the feeds are antennas. You can broadcast and receive information. And in this case, the blocks that would be inserted here, like in this example, a POAP, can be an open sitting, an image, and many other things that can be developed by you and by the community. So, for example, if you need something more oriented towards governance, voting, or different types of voting, it doesn't have to be only thumbs up, thumbs down. It can be voted on a spectrum from strongly disagree to strongly agree and a bunch of things in the middle. You have lots of freedom to build and be creative. And this is the idea of the worlds, the platforms themselves powered by this core at the nucleus. And AKASHA worlds are modular platforms enabling communities to self-organize, build, and access these apps, which is in a way very powerful because the communities themselves can guide the evolution of the platform itself. So it's almost like the equivalent of an app store can build itself out, learning from the needs of the community. So if you have something that's very charity-oriented, crowdfunding, that would be a very specific use case with a specific interface. But on the other hand, if you would have something like a scientific research or an art project, the interfaces would be very different among themselves because the needs would be different. And this architecture allows for all of these use cases to coexist, thrive, and because of interoperability ideas, something that is developed in one community can be reused in another without reinventing the wheel. So that being said, this is an example of how the interface could look like. You know, at first sight, it's pretty basic. You have this feed with all the other applications that would be installable in the left sidebar. With the mention that in this case, you know, where you have the Ethereum logo, this is also something about the beauty of the composability, but in this case, not about the content creators, but about the content readers. And, you know, like the like button that we are so familiar with, and in some cases, like people were asking, like, where's the like button? There is a reason behind not having it, mainly being that in 2006, Facebook introduced this mechanism for signaling, but mainly it was not about, you know, getting people better off, but rather improving the quality of the data gathered from all the people using the platform in order to serve better spam. So we thought maybe we can do better. You know, Web3 opens all of these new ways of interacting, sending value across the internet, managing it, distributing it in all kinds of creative ways, which is why we left this functionality open. So this means that no matter if you are a developer that wants to take the full challenge of building something like a full-fledged social platform, or a developer that wants to focus on one specific app, or someone that wants to focus on one specific functionality as a way in which the community can interact, there's room for you in all of this, and we are welcoming you if you want to play with it. As an example, because I mentioned the ETH Bucharest project, one interesting idea explored by a team is the idea of the bubble breaker, which I'm looking forward to seeing it in action in the next days, which takes this idea of, like, you know, you have echo chambers, and within this context, the bubble breaker would allow certain types of content to go beyond your bubble, your echo chamber, so to say, and this would help reduce polarity within communities and discoverability of content that is worthy to be discovered, not promoted because some black box algorithm. And this being said, why? You know, At times, especially because we had so many years in which we explored this problem, the idea of, or the question of why was asked many times. And even with Ethereum itself, decentralization is something that's very important and close to the heart of many, I think, in this room. And even if it's something that we say very often, I think at the same time it's a word that can have many, many connotations. And at times if you have 10 people saying decentralization, what do you mean by that? Some people would give maybe a more technical answer. Someone would give you a different type, like empowerment and decision, like democratic type of processes. But what is actually decentralization? If you think about it. Is it something that we can understand better and achieve that shared understanding, which is key to getting to the next phase? And as part of this effort of explaining, we have a number of terms that were explored around. One of them being the minimum viable centralization, which kind of defines the minimum required centralization in a decentralized project to be maintained. And the Linux Foundation explored this as part of their open governance model, in which they are justifying the existence of the Linux Foundation as this coordinator of resources, people, projects, and you need some degree of centralization, even if the project as an overall thing is decentralized. Next, we have the idea of progressive decentralization, which is something that we hear maybe more often in our space, including from Arbitrum, which is a project that is sponsoring this event. And to give you an example of how they are describing on their documentation, they have these 4, let's say, dimensions or things in which they are tracking the degree of decentralization: chain ownership, validator ownership, sequencer ownership, and data availability community ownership. So this is one way in which you can kind of get deeper into it. What exactly do you mean by decentralization? And obviously in this progressive term, you are implying going towards something from a starting point which is centralized, increasingly more decentralized. And during, again, like decentralization, it's starting to become a bit clearer, but the idea of viable, I think it's something that we should include in this definition. And viability as a term, you have a few of them. The first 2 are my favorite: capable of success or continuing effectiveness, also as a synonym possible. But the second one is my favorite because of that image, the organic, living, thriving thing. Capable of living, developing, or germinating under favorable conditions. To which I would also add being resilient enough to support unfavorable conditions when the moment arises, so many times. And with this in mind, if we apply the idea of minimum in front of the viable decentralization, now we are forced to kind of go into the scarcity mindset, which, you have minimum viable product and a bunch of other things that kind of force you, yes, it would be great if we would have all of these things, but like really articulate what is the core functionality or the core things that need to be respected within that system or product to be considered okay to go. So in this case, I would say that minimum viable decentralization offers us a mental framework on a spectrum of things where we could say that beyond a certain threshold, the thing is no longer decentralized, so it's like centralized, just call it what it is, or minimum viable centralized. And on the other side, where you are crossing that threshold into the minimum viability, then you can be considered decentralized because there will be some strong arguments behind it, not just slapping it on the website, yay, decentralized. And at the other end, because this is not just a one, let's say, thing, you have the maximum viable decentralization, which now puts you in the abundance mindset where you have, let's say, you are invited to think about the long-term goals, like where do you want this system to go? That's the other side of the coin. So if the minimum viability invites you to really get the starting point, the maximum viability invites you to define where would you want to go as the ideal scenario. With the viability in the middle, also putting the idea that there are many things and many wishes, but not all of them are viable for many reasons, either for technological reasons and or the available community members and knowledge in a system. And there is a glitch in the metrics there, but don't mind that. And the let's say, moniker under which we compress this concept is MaxVD, To showcase this, we can visualize it on two axes. So if on the bottom side we go from maximum centralized to maximum decentralized, on the y-axis we go from non-viable to very viable, maximum viable. So if we take this mental framework and try to map things on it, we would kind of have these four quadrants in which we could map various things. And at the crossover between the dotted lines, you would have the non-viable decentralization to minimum viable decentralization, and then on the other side, non-viable centralization and minimum viable centralization. In the corners being, let's say, the maximum characteristics, but we'll get to that a bit later. So now the main idea that I want to leave with you is that the decentralization as a concept is a spectrum. It's not something that, you know, we are done. It's something that, depending also on the technologies available that become usable, like, I don't know, ZK proofs, homomorphic encryption, and many others, the degree of decentralization within a system that we can achieve viably will increase and shift. And the viability part is something that we need to constantly re-evaluate. So, also something that sometimes escapes is the multidimensionality of this decentralization, because, you know, you have, in this case, 5 examples of decentralization. It can be decisional, and this, let's say, ties in with governance systems and how decisions are being made, financial systems, financial models. Then we have organizational. Is it like something that's hierarchical, more decentralized in decision-making, like holacracy or other types of organizing? Technological. The technology itself as a layer, is it decentralized? The implementation on the technological layer is decentralized. And of course, the thing that we don't talk very often, the legal side, which refers kind of the regulatory environment in which your project will exist, because you as a physical person exist somewhere. You live somewhere, even if we like to believe code is law. Just as an example, as this evolution of, let's say, new ways and vehicles of collaboration for society as a whole that was brought by blockchain technologies, we have the idea of DAOs, which we are, I guess, pretty much familiar with, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. And as a continuation of the work that I was doing in the initial years of establishing the Ethereum Foundation and the legal framework for making sure that we can do the Ethereum project without anyone going to jail. Yes! Milestone. So far, all good. I continued asking the question, is a foundation the best we can do for providing this legal framework, ensuring the contributions can be made within the community without the developers themselves being afraid? You know, would I get in trouble if I make a commit to this project? Which was a question asked more often back then than it is now. So the DAAs would be part of the, if we had before with AKASHA Core the software type of hacking, the DAA would be a continuation of the legal type of hacking that we've explored in Switzerland. The DAA is standing for Decentralized Autonomous Association. And I will get into that a bit later, but we also have the DAWs and the DAWAs as an example. And some of you might say DAWA, which stands in our, let's say, lore for Decentralized Autonomous World Association, which is kind of a component on the legal layer, enabling communities to safely govern their worlds through a legally recognized legal entity, which, you know, if you use a DAO, it's great, and it provides all of these advantages in terms of transparent resource management and how you can coordinate collective action for a particular purpose. And, you know, the purist inside would say, yes, but if it's in a jurisdiction, it's not decentralized because it's one jurisdiction. To which, you know, the other side would say, yes, but Switzerland is quite decentralized, one of the most decentralized jurisdictions you can do your project in. So it's always kind of a trade-off, so to say, when you choose where you make your stand. But usually it's good to have a stand somewhere, because otherwise all the individual members are liable in all the jurisdictions, because you are not making your stand in one, so you have like a shield for what you're doing. So this provides a way in which you can maintain the core concepts of decentralized governance, decentralized resource management, and transparent use of the resources within the organization, with the democratic way of organizing the association being the default, which is modular and can be customized if the case is. Speaking on this graph, coming back just so we illustrate a bit, so it doesn't remain too abstract, let's take the story of a project. A community that has their heart in the right place and really want to do something. And as is the case many times, ideas and projects do not start fully from the I'm viable stage. You need to find that thing. So now we are kind of finding ourselves on this threshold between centralization and decentralization. And through a process of gradual, progressive decentralization, you are becoming increasingly more decentralized on this axis. And as a series of decisions, you're getting closer to that viability, that sustainability, which is where you want to be, because you want sustainability to be part of your project, so it has a long-term future ahead of it. And yes, we are doing super great, yay, we are living the dream, almost there in the top corner ideal state. However, life happens, and for various things, misaligned incentives and so on, it's like, yeah, but what if we do a governance token, and then you mix economic incentives and governance, and things get really messy, and just a handful of wallets get control, and then decentralized, 3 wallets make the decision for an entire community of hundreds of thousands of people. You're getting into this dangerous territory here, and if no action is taken, well, non-viable, centralized, even if your heart was in the right place, you had a cool idea, you had a cool vision, but life happened. However, if you have this idea that decentralization is not something static, but actually a series of decisions in time that you can map, you can actually take corrective courses and actions that would get you back on track. And this is something that sometimes, fantasize, like, yes, we will have a 5-year plan, and that's what we're going to go. But then, so many things shift rapidly, and especially in the crypto space, blockchain space, so many technologies evolve, and what was cool 2 years ago is now obsolete. And in that 5-year plan, things are often not happening as described. So I would say that rather governance and finding your path within this space is more like walking on the bicycle. So you have to constantly balance each step forward. And this would provide a way in which you can visualize this. So sometimes, instead of flying blind, having some kind of feedback makes the difference. And this is another key idea that I would like to leave with this audience. If nothing else, stays, this would be also a cool one. Decentralization is a journey. And how we get to where we want to be is something that takes a lot of effort, a lot of dedication, and sometimes even with the best intentions, if you cannot measure how well you are doing, it's very hard to stay on track. The road to hell is paved with good intentions and all that. The idea that was I mentioning there, with smarter communities, it ties into this fact that instead of flying blind and without having this source of feedback in which you can map if your community is doing well or bad, it's hard to stay on track. But with this type of feedback mechanisms and using this type of modular platforms that enable the customization of the functionality and this type of legal entity that enables the decentralized governance of the platform itself without sacrificing the, let's say, empowerment and all this transparency and the crypto-native functionality of using stable coins, ETH, and a bunch of other ERC tokens, it's still there, just that in a different form. And as part of this, I would like to share that, 10 years later, from the things that we were naively, let's say, dreaming that, wow, it's going to be so cool, and we are next year for sure. 10 years later, I'm, a bit more wise, and I understand all the effort and all the painful, perseverance that you have to go through to achieve it. And we have just one, let's say 1.5 hubs that we tried this idea, one in Barcelona, and we have here in audience Carmen and Lorenzo, which, if you find this interesting, you should talk with them because it's something really awesome. And in this space, as let's say the complementary aspect, because interactions and social interactions do not need to stay only on the online, and we saw maybe better how important these things are in during the pandemic when we craved for that interaction with each other to feel that you belong in a community. I think it has its value. And as a complementary thing in this triple stack where you have the software and then you have the legal part and now you have the physical infrastructure, the communities can manage themselves very how to say, decentralized while maintaining autonomy and making the use of all the great things that crypto can provide. And just to give you a brief example here, this is a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary hub where you have these events bringing together people from all areas of life, from 3D printing, and in this case it's 3D printing food. You have art and science type of installations, and then you have all of this co-gardening area where you explore all types of, from high-tech gardening to sustainable form of gardening, and the prototyping where, including this bicycle here, if you go on it, you make some light bulbs go on. So a bunch of crazy cool ideas that will get you inspired in some way, and even if not all of the communities visiting this are blockchain specific, they do get inspired by what can you do with blockchain and think about how could I use it in my community for my purpose and need. And this is where we have this idea of decentralized autonomous worlds, which, to make it, how to say, short, it would be this idea of the platforms that I described before, but with three very important traits that would make it or break it. So on one side, you have the maximum viable decentralization, which we cover, this way in which you make sure that the system itself is as decentralized as possible, and in the context of the association, the DAWA that I mentioned, one way in which this maximum viability in the decentralized aspect is achieved is that we made it possible so there is no president. You know, when the lawyers ask, like, oh, you want to do an association? Cool. So who's the president? It's like, do we really need a president? They like the challenge, and apparently you do not need to have a president for an association, neither a treasurer or a secretary. The commercial registry in Switzerland, and I am curious if also in Romania, maybe this is something we can apply in this jurisdiction as well, just specifies that the association needs to fulfill some obligations. So instead of having this concentration of power under three people or three roles, because sometimes one person is the president, treasurer, and secretary, you need to start somewhere. In this case, you have a panel of people which are specialized on things from ethics to technology to membership, governance, and so on. Another very important core principle that is characteristic to this decentralized autonomous worlds is the maximum viable privacy, which gets into this idea that you do not need to hoard as much data as possible because you would make use of it sometimes. You know, if it happened to install on your app or on your phone an app like a flashlight, and then suddenly it wanted access to your calendar, your contacts, and everything, it's like, man, it's a flashlight. Why do you need all of that stuff? That's just a way in which they're probably like maximizing how much data they can get without caring about their privacy, because they will make money selling that data and so on. So this is a way in which we are trying to get the functionality that people expect from products without invading their privacy and finding that middle ground between what is possible with the technologies today and the technologies of tomorrow, so to say. And not least, you know, you might say, but why again? And this is a core idea that we reached. Decentralization and privacy, core also values of Ethereum, I think are building blocks for liberty. And I'm using in this context liberty because I think it's not information that wants to be free, it's people. And instead of freedom, I'm using liberty because we are talking about communities. And in some cases, you have the idea that the individual's freedom is more important than the community freedom. And the idea here is that you can find the common ground where you can have both individual freedom and community freedom as a form of agreed upon social contracts where things can evolve, reach that social contract, evolve that code of conduct, and get to that ideal state. And rushing in here towards the end, the question is, now that we are at this Ethereum conference, can we apply these things also for Ethereum Romania, this beautiful community that is showing here today? And I think yes. I think there are ways, and to bring it all together, now that we reach this stage after all this time, bringing the technology to the point where we can invite developers to build with it. We have this established legal framework that can be used if people choose to, but you can just have as well a DAO, a SRL, a GmbH, and LTD, whatever you want to operate your network, alongside this idea of physical hubs, which I think would be a really cool addition. We decided, after seeing how great this event is and how great the people are, to bringing it all together also in Bucharest soon. So with the occasion of this conference, I would like to announce that coming soon to a space near you, We'll have AKASHA Bucharest in collaboration with ETH Bucharest. So the idea is to facilitate and nurture this community, to have a space where we could organize hackathons on a more, how to say, stable date, how to bring together the people forming this, make connections between various projects, and, you know, getting this running again like 10 years ago. So that being said, I would like to thank you all for your attention, for your time. Wishing you a beautiful conference moving forward. And let's do this!